Have you ever felt like you're working harder than everyone else, but still falling behind? Like you're running on a treadmill, putting in all the effort, but not actually getting anywhere? If so, I want to tell you a story about a farmer named Daniel. It's a story that completely changed how I think about work and success. Daniel was the hardest working farmer in the valley. From the first light of dawn until the last sliver of sun disappeared behind the mountains, he was out in his fields. He plowed, he sowed, he watered, he weeded. His hands were calloused, his back ached, and his face was permanently tanned from the sun. He believed in the simple virtue of hard work. The more you sweat, the more you get. It was the motto he lived by. But there was a problem, a big one. Despite his relentless effort, Daniel's farm was just average. His crops were okay, but never the best. His profits were enough to get by, but never enough to get ahead. He was constantly tired, constantly stressed, and constantly wondering why his hard work wasn't paying off the way it was supposed to. Right next door lived another farmer named Michael. Michael's farm was a different story altogether. His corn stood taller, his tomatoes were juicier, and his pumpkins were the talk of the town market. His farm was thriving. But here is the strange part. Michael didn't seem to work nearly as hard as Daniel. He started his day a little later. He took a long break in the afternoon, and in the evenings, you could often see him sitting on his porch, reading a book or playing with his kids. This drove Daniel crazy. He'd watch Michael from across the fence, a mix of confusion and resentment brewing inside him. How was it possible? Was Michael just lucky? Did he have some secret fertilizer? One day, curiosity and frustration finally got the better of him. He walked over to Michael's fence. "Michael," Daniel called out, trying to keep the edge out of his voice. "I have to ask, what's your secret? I work from sunup to sundown. I never take a day off. But your farm, it puts mine to shame. What am I doing wrong?" Michael smiled warmly and gestured for Daniel to come over. He wasn't secretive or smug. He was open and kind. "Daniel," he began, "I used to be just like you. I believed that more hours meant more results. I worked myself to the bone, and just like you, my farm was barely scraping by. I was exhausted and on the verge of giving up." Daniel leaned in, listening intently. This was not what he expected to hear. "Then one year," Michael continued, "a bad storm wiped out half my crops. I was devastated. I didn't have the energy to replant everything, so I had to make a choice. I decided to focus all my remaining energy on the half of the field that was salvageable. I spent time analyzing the soil, figuring out exactly what those specific plants needed. I focused on quality, not just quantity." He paused, letting his words sink in. "And you know what happened? That half harvest ended up producing more than my full harvests ever had. The crops were healthier, bigger, and fetched a much better price at the market. It was a revelation." Michael explained his new philosophy. It wasn't about working harder, it was about working smarter. He called it his 3 pillars of smart farming. The first pillar was strategy. Michael didn't just plant things randomly. Before each season, he spent weeks planning. He studied market trends to see which crops would be most profitable, He tested his soil to understand its specific needs. He rotated his crops to keep the soil healthy and prevent pests. His work in the fields was just the execution of a well-thought-out plan. Daniel, on the other hand, just did what he'd always done, planting the same things, the same places, year after year. The second pillar was focus. Michael explained that he practiced what he called deep work. When he was in the fields, he was 100% focused on the task at hand. No distractions. He'd work in focused bursts of 90 minutes and then take a short break. He realized that 4 hours of focused, intentional work was more productive than 8 hours of distracted, half-hearted labor. Daniel, in contrast, was always multitasking. He'd be thinking about the broken fence while watering the crops, or worrying about bills while weeding. His mind was always scattered, just like his efforts. And the third pillar, the one that surprised Daniel the most, was rest. Michael insisted that rest wasn't laziness. It was a critical part of the process. Daniel, your land needs to lie fallow to recover its nutrients, right? He asked. Daniel nodded. Well, your body and mind are the same. When you're constantly exhausted, your decision-making suffers. You make mistakes. You lose creativity. That long break I take in the afternoon, that's when I do my best thinking. I read books on new farming techniques. I reflect on my day. Or I simply rest so I can come back to work refreshed and sharp. Daniel stood there, stunned. Everything Michael said made perfect sense. He had been so focused on the doing that he had completely neglected the thinking and the recharging. He was like a woodcutter trying to chop down a forest with a dull axe, believing the answer was to swing harder, not to stop and sharpen the blade. That conversation was a turning point for Daniel. He didn't stop working hard, but he changed how he worked. He started spending his winter evenings creating a detailed strategy for the next season. He adopted Michael's method of focused work bursts, finding he got more done before noon than he used to in a whole day. And, most difficult of all, he forced himself to take breaks. He started taking Sundays off to spend with his family. He took a nap in the hot afternoons. The change wasn't instant, but slowly, surely, his farm began to transform. His planning led to better crop choices. His focused work led to healthier plants and fewer mistakes. And his rest gave him the energy and clarity to solve problems he'd been struggling with for years. Within 2 years, Daniel's farm was rivaling Michael's. He was earning more than ever before. But more importantly, he was happier. He wasn't a slave to his farm anymore. He was its master. He finally understood that success isn't just about the sweat on your brow. It's about the strategy in your mind, the focus in your actions, and the wisdom to know when to rest and recharge. So if you feel like you're stuck on that treadmill, working tirelessly without moving forward, maybe it's time to step off for a moment. Ask yourself, what's my strategy? Am I truly focused or just busy? And am I giving myself the rest I need to be at my best? You might discover, just like Daniel, that the path to a better harvest isn't about working harder, but about working smarter. Thanks for watching. If this story resonated with you, hit that like button and subscribe for more content to help you work smarter, not just harder. See you in the next video.